My name is Elizabeth Dale Dynas. I work at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and I am our video conference coordinator. I have been with American Art for about 3.5 years. My focus before my current position was working with our Department of Defense school system collaboration. So we'll touch on that very briefly, but I'm going to focus today primarily on our Artful Connections video conference program. Our video conference program began because of our building. So just as a heads up, our building was the patent office. It was erected in 1836. It was a field hospital during the Civil War, and then it was opened to the public as a museum in 1968. So fast forward to 1999, about 2000, our docents started our distance learning program. This was an initiative of theirs. And when our museum closed for a 6-year renovation, we had in place the opportunity to keep our docents teaching and focus on our collection on point, even though we knew we were going to be closed for a long time. It also, of course, gave us the opportunity to broaden our reach and better fulfill our mandate to increase and diffuse knowledge as a Smithsonian museum. So I have our two museums up here because, of course, the Smithsonian American Art Museum focuses on the American experience through fine art, but we also do have our collection that is housed at the Renwick, so that's our collection of American craft. Okay, so this is where we started. We started with a group of dedicated docents with some very, at the time, cutting-edge equipment, doing reaching out to audiences all over the place. But we had, as Nancy talked about before, simply the option to have either the artwork up or our docent speaking. We then began using green screen, which I would recommend almost to anyone if you're going to do a PowerPoint-driven video conference as we do. Being able to actually stand in front of the artwork makes a tremendous difference. So you may notice that I titled this 9 years along. Well, I've already said that we started our distance learning program in 2000, so that's 13 years. But no, so the reason that I say 9 years along is because we've started really codifying, really putting in place and formalizing our Artful Connections program in 2004. So that's the program that I'm talking about right now. We have the opportunity with our video conference studios to reach out to anyone outside the Beltway. Our guideline is that if you have H.323 protocol equipment, we would like to connect with you, but if you could feasibly come and actually see our museum, we'd prefer that you do that. So we prioritize reaching to people outside of the Beltway. We recently had the opportunity to add a third studio to our collection of studios, which of course means that we need to grow to fill that studio to really make our funders' investment worthwhile. So we started thinking about how do we grow by looking at our geographic reach so far. As you can see, we've got push pins all over the world. The reason that we've got push pins outside of the United States is because of that Department of Defense collaboration. So that's just to explain why there are other red buttons all over this map. We have, since 2004, given free video conferences to a ton of people. And we prioritize schools, but we do third grade and up. So we have just recently started a collaboration with Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes. We have connected with senior centers. We've connected with libraries. So we have a really broad reach, and it's really exciting. When I say that we went back to our geographic reach as a way to inform our growth, it's because we noticed that we had rather a gap. As you can see, we connect very ably and readily with tons of teachers in the Northeast, which is really great. We're very thankful for Beth Abbott and her many connections per year. But we would like to make sure that we're connecting with everyone, and we have really prioritized connecting with underserved audiences. So Susan Nichols had applied for a youth access grant, which gives us an opportunity to figure out why we have this gap. Is this gap because these are areas that don't have access to equipment? Is it a gap because they don't know that we're free or that we even exist? Is the gap because we don't address something that they really need addressed in their school? So that's a study that we're undertaking currently, and I don't have any data to share with you, unfortunately, on that right now, but it's underway. So we also looked at how our program has been used. As you can see at the top, this is across our history from 2004 to today. We have a ton of elementary school users, which seems to be consistent with what Anne was talking about last night. We've got a ton of elementary school users, it seems, in a lot of museum programs, but arguably, we are video conferencing. We are bringing our program to your school. So what's the big hurdle for getting into middle and high schools? You'll also notice that our performance, our reach, has varied a little bit over the years. In the past 4 years that you can see, we have quite a dip. The dip is because we started to have some major tech problems. We started to have real concerns getting connected to these far sites. We recognized that the safety and security of the Smithsonian Institution was actually a huge roadblock for distant audiences getting to meet up with us. We also recognized that our program was growing at such a clip that we needed to find a way to get a new person on board who could actually schedule all of these video conferences. And this is because our program is rather different from others that have spoken today. Our program is entirely volunteer-driven. We depend on a core of volunteers. Right now we have 12 to deliver our video conferences. So we needed two big things. We needed to put into place a bridging service, which we have with Magpie, which has been really great. And we needed also to get somebody on staff to help corral all 12 of these people who wanted to give their time, but needed to be able to get it organized. So we're aiming for growth now. We have put into place a goal to do about 312 to 320 video conferences next school year, which is an aggressive goal, and I'm really excited about it, but it does mean that we need to kind of identify how we can do that. So we recognize that we want to reach a broader audience because we've got more than half of our pie in elementary school. So a good way to grow our usership would be to reach a larger audience, a wider age range. And we know that there are gaps in our geographic reach. We also needed to put some infrastructure in place, some things that would entice teachers and then also allow us to fulfill those requests. So we recognize that we need to bring on new presenters. We need to grow our core of presenters. We also recognize that we need to develop tour topics that appeal to a broader age range. And I'm going to cover two things related to this big idea, specifically in the next 5 minutes. First, we needed to get all of our presenters and this ever-growing core of presenters all heading in the same direction, and make sure that we are not sacrificing quality for the purposes of growth. We also needed to, like I said, create those tour topics and figure out which tour topics would actually appeal to a broader range of teachers. So, I made a mistake. In my first months of being in this position, I decided what we really needed was a mission statement. And I took my little self and wrote a mission statement that will look suspiciously like what you may have seen at NAEA with our block of active verbs. And I said, presenters, we're going to do this and it's going to be really exciting. And this had been a volunteer-initiated program. This had been a volunteer-driven program. My predecessor, Sally Otis, had done an incredible job of creating a community of volunteers. And here's this upstart Elizabeth who decides, I'm going to change the way we do things. When in reality, this was what we had always been doing, but there had not been a formalized mission statement up till now. So, if you have to learn from my experience, it would be, don't do what I did. Nonetheless, we're working on this mission statement, and what it does is it's kind of course, laying out our priorities, but it's also getting us all going in the same direction. Top bit is we want to share our collection with third grade and on up lifelong learners outside the Beltway. We want to actively engage participants, just like we talked about last night. Question-driven is definitely, for me, the way to go. That's what we've prioritized as a philosophy, but we need to also pepper in content, so it's not just the students answering questions. So we needed to empower and enable our presenters, our volunteers, to answer questions if the students had questions, to be able to pepper in a little bit of information as was relevant. And then finally, we recognize that we need to connect directly to core content standards. We need to help teachers better understand how we connect with the standards that they're responsible for teaching to, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. There we go. So, working with the presenters, we are slowly all getting in the same direction. We are cultivating a relationship, me and them, that's working out better and better every day. And we then needed to figure out what we're going to be presenting on. What are our tour topics? As you can see behind me, we had initially put together 12 tour topics that we saw as strengths of our collection and things that would appeal to teachers. When we looked at the data, we recognized that 2 of these tour topics, no matter how amazing they are, were not getting requested with any sort of regularity. In fact, we have, by comparison, To See is to Think, which is our visual literacy sort of introductory tour topic, we had 254 requests since 2009 for that single tour topic. By comparison, we had 15 requests in the same time period for recognizing women artists and 18 requests for the 1930s. So we thought, if we're going to dedicate space and resources to these topics, we need to make sure that they're topics that teachers would like. We needed to figure out how to fill those gaps. So we reached out to teachers that have video conferenced with us in the past, and we asked, of these topics that we identified as strengths, which ones appeal to you? And we got some really incredible feedback. The feedback we got, you can see behind me, but it basically speaks to these issues of historical empathy. It speaks to teachers' desires to teach across the curriculum, and they really need something that's relevant to what they're doing in the classroom. The top 2 picks were the art of persuasion, which the big question for that was from posters to murals to portraits, how do artists help mold our opinions and impressions of people and communities? And then the second pick was narrative in art. How do artists build a narrative in a static image? How are artists, poets, and authors inspired by each other's works? So now we have 2. We have 2 slots we can fill. Perfect. Except we recognize that with staffing limitations, with wanting to make sure that we are training up our new core of presenters in a way that is empowering them to do what we'd like them to be able to do, we needed to kind of scale back. For each one of our tour topics, we provide pre- and post lessons. Those are downloadable on our website. So just putting a new tour topic on the menu is not enough. We also have to develop resources and materials that support it. So I recognized that no matter how enthusiastic I was, I needed to scale back a little bit. And so we're prioritizing the art of persuasion because we recognize, well, that gives us an opportunity to talk about modern American history. We don't have a modern American history topic, so let's go with that one, and then prioritize when we've got more time doing the narrative and art. So here we are, and I am awfully excited to be here, so I'm sorry if I'm speaking too quickly, but I did want to leave 2 items with you if you're thinking about starting video conferencing in your own institution, or if you are thinking about sort of applicable things for online learning, to just let you know how important it is to collaborate with teachers. With video conferencing, it's really, really important to build relationships with teachers because you really have to overcome that hurdle of, I don't want to invest my time in technology that doesn't go. You have to be there to say, we'll work on it. I'll stay on the test call with you for 4 hours if it's what it takes. I want to connect with you. We need to be able to tailor the video conference that we present to them in a way that really addresses what they're doing in their classroom, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense to the students. And this is all stuff I know that you know, but it's applicable to video conferencing. The other thing that I needed to do was help my presenters understand the benefits and challenges of the technology. A lot of these people are willing, wonderful, able people who do tours in the galleries, and they wanted video conferencing to be like those tours. And we need to recognize that video conference is never going to be going to the museum, walking past a whole bunch of beautiful artworks on your way to the thing that you're going to talk about. So we really needed to encourage the presenters to pare down their presentations. Sometimes they were aspiring to talk about 16 to 20 artworks in a single 45-minute period. We needed to help them recognize 8 artworks is really good. That gives you an opportunity to actually appreciate what's there, what this artist has created. So those were just things that we were working on that are really exciting possibilities. And what I'm really curious about for the future is recognizing that we are a Polycom shop. And as Beth mentioned before, when her Tandberg dies, she's not going to have the technology that we traditionally connect with. So Susan has already begun asking us, what else can we connect with? What are other options? How can we expand our reach technologically? So that's me, and I'm at 0.